beautiful hello to all of you. My name is Minnku, Buttar, founder of the Circle of Joy, bringing you self-mastery programs and retreats. It gives me great pleasure and joy to bring you this series of interviews, choosing joy, secrets and stories from all over the world. It is my diligent attempt to show you that joy is not a hokey pokey, frivolous concept, but it's a discipline. And it's so needed if you want to be resilient and resistant and radiant. So join me on the 1st and the 15th of each month. I will see you there. Hello and namaste. My name is Minnku Buttar, your host from India, and welcome to the first episode of a talk show, Choosing Joy, Secrets and Stories from Around the World. 15-minute stories, impactful, fun, quirky, to create ripples of joy in this world. Today on this first kickoff episode, I have invited someone who has inspired me with his ideologies ever since I have known him. He's the founder and CEO and reimaginator of 360 Degrees Nation. His Biz Catalyst 360 Degrees is an award-winning lifestyle, culture, and business new media digest, and with its 700 worldwide contributors, and maybe there's more, no wonder it got awarded the 2020 Standard of Excellence Award by the Web Marketing Association. And of course, there was Hope Fest 360, another amazing journey from him that had New Year messages and music from all over the world that served to raise global consciousness and humaneness. And I am so humbled to have been a contributing author to this amazing nonprofit publishing ventures of his and Hope Fest. Please join me to welcome Dennis PITTOCO, if I'm announcing that right.
You are.
All the way from United States of America. Dennis, thank you. Thank you for accepting my invite. And I am so delighted to have you here.
Well, this is not meant to be a play on words, but it is truly a joy to be here. And I mean that, as we talked before, this is your first time. And to single out me from around the world and all the amazing people it's a real pleasure, it's an honor, and it is truly a joy.
Oh, you are so welcome. Dennis, I couldn't have thought of a more appropriate person in my whole fraternity in the world that I know out there. So, Dennis, let's start this, beautiful journey that, our first episode. Do you ever ask yourself, who am I? And if you do, I'm curious, Dennis, who is Dennis PITTOCO?
Wow. Boy, that could go on forever. But let me just say, I truly believe, and this is a thought that's been developed over many years. And as I interface with other people, it becomes more and more real to me. And that is, I believe, not just me, but we are all kind of like the sum total of everyone we've ever met. And I'm talking about from birth. When I came down that canal, met my mom and met my dad, they touched me in so many ways, from that first word they uttered, perhaps. Nobody else since then has had the same sequence of actions or reactions that have created my life and my understanding. Nobody's thinking right now what I'm thinking. So to the naked observer, I might fit into some kind of category, but that probably doesn't define me, because the only quality I share with everybody else in the world, and I know this to be true, is that I'm unique enough to be independent, but close enough to everybody like you, Minnku, to recognize the uniqueness in you. And that's a broad way I look at things, but knowing that you're a part of everybody you interface with, it changes you. Good people, bad people, people down the middle, and then you start to define who you are because of that. And then you got to make choices, as you know.
Absolutely. I hear you, I feel you, the soul connection that we all humans have with each other. That's so fabulous. And I think when we can have this soul connection that you talk about, Dennis, without any frivolous, makeovers, And if you could do these authentic relationships that we are lacking so much because everyone's so afraid to be vulnerable.
Yes.
I think that's really, and I have heard you, Dennis, say this over and over again, and I quote this in your words. You said, it's time to renew in both our hearts and in our souls more joy, more kindness, more compassion, more understanding, and that magical sense of truly belonging to something greater than our status quo. And this is really why I tell you, I resonate with everything in all that you're doing, Dennis. So perhaps you want to interpret that for our audience. What do you mean, this magical sense of truly belonging to something greater?
I'd be happy to do that because, as we grew, whatever I'm doing, we have the Biz Catalyst, we have 360 Nation. As we got bigger and bigger, we knew where we were heading. We knew we had a vision of doing good, but people couldn't quite figure us out, Minnku. So finally, this goes a few years back. I sat down and did something I don't do very often. I actually wrote an article for my own website. And the idea was to define what we mean by renewing both our hearts and our souls more. What does that mean? And the question that started coming in after we published that was, that's wonderful, we embrace it, but how do we do it? People, you presume people just know what that means. Well, they don't necessarily. They wanted more. So we created a roadmap for them and said, it's funny how this thing evolved, because we started out with listing, 13 things you could do, like, more empathy, more faith, more forgiveness, more gratitude, all those words that we speak about. And we said to them, as I wrote this article, look, if you have ideas of more things we can do to kind of bring our souls more joy, more kind, tell us about it. Well, that was a few years back. We start with 13. We now have 37. That roadmap just keeps getting better. There's an article on our site that talks about this, but what's most important to me in terms of just not saying those words, I've been in, my goodness, how many Zoom meetings, conferences, I know you have, Minnku, and I hear a lot of great humanity-driven words, but something we are so, I should use the probably manic about on what we do is being authentic. You mentioned the word authentic, but when I say authentic, I mean, don't share with me, like I'm sharing right now, the great slogans or the great article. Walk the talk. The best way you can define your authenticity is actually demonstrating it and having some kind of an anchor that you weigh everything you do against. Because back to your point of being authentic and talking about joy in these things, I think we live in an increasingly skeptical world. Authenticity is, people are skeptical of that, because if you're being yourself, Minnku, and I'm being myself, I hate to say, people think there's a catch until they dive deeper and deeper and deeper. And once they discover that, in my opinion, they want more. They want to know, how did Minnku get there? How did Dennis get there? And that is the turning point. And I've seen that pivot. It's magical to watch.
That is awesome. And, Dennis, I run these, a 4-week self-mastery program called the Joyfulness Code, and that's available on my website. And I'm telling you, the one thing that I'm hearing from my clients is, how do I get there? I understand that this is where I need to get, but how do you get there? So I think it's not just the craving, but the carving.
Exactly.
That needs to happen. And, we humans are surrounded by self-creating demons. I'm sorry, but I have to use that word because they're scary. Low self-worth, harsh judgments for ourselves, for others, your fears, your anxieties. And this is what stands between, the gurgling laughter that you can just do wherever you are. And this stands between us and joy. So Dennis, I call this segment the spilling the secrets. So can you share one such challenge, since we're talking about being authentic, that you have overcome, and how did you get there? I mean, I would love to hear that.
Oh, thank you. And that word demon probably isn't too strong, and probably even more so in the last couple of years. People have continued to define themselves in the wake of the world kind of all being in the same bucket. So I think it's a great question, and I think it's not, the word demon really means a lot right now, and it's a harder hill to climb. But let me back up and say I was, and truly, and when I say the word blessed, I was blessed very early in my career. My career before everything I'm doing today, I was a banker. And I traveled the world, did a lot of international banking. And there were a number of times very early on, I think I was in my early 20s, when I was being mentored by some of these gods of the industry. And I watched and I listened and I learned, and I saw things that most people my age didn't see in terms of things not being done right. And I don't want to go into the detail, but the point is, I learned very on. I got an understanding of what my moral compass should be, what was going to guide me. And I don't want to say I knew that when I grew up. I just kind of got into some ugly situations in my career, and I had to make choices, and I had to define myself. And those choices became that anchor or that moral compass. I'm blessed to have that, because that became what I'll call the litmus test for everything that I've done since then. I've been grounded in authenticity. I've been grounded in that old definition of integrity, which is always doing the right thing, even when nobody's watching. And I didn't care. And I'm going to say this not in an arrogant way. I really didn't care whether I was liked or I was popular, as long as I could always go back to, is it the right thing to do? I was accused of being different, but I was also accused of being consistent and predictable, because they knew what Dennis was going to do. And that has grounded me. And I didn't realize how important that was, Minnku. I mean, until I look back on it now, and so many things that have happened. And boy, that is tested every day in business and personally, because we all know what the right thing is. When you get to a certain age of reasoning, because I've had that question, say, Dennis, well, how do we know what's right? I think then you're back to choices.
Yes, I think that's beautiful, Dennis. And you tapping into my favorite topic, the ikigai. I cannot tell you, I have that word coming out of my ear, nose, throat, because I just think, how wonderful would the world be? How joyful would the world be if we could actually really from our hearts know what it is that we want? And if we throw that in with the occupation that we're doing, I think it creates a beautiful, joyful space. And I know that you're doing that. And that's the reason that I knew that this is exactly where you needed to be on this talk show. So now, one last question before we skid into the world of rapid fire questions, which is very exciting. Now, Dennis, to our listeners, how can we make this world a joyous space? And what kind of conversations? I'm not going to say, are we having? I'm going to say, what conversations are we not having that we should? What do you think?
That's another excellent question, one that I've made note of because of some of the online forums I have. I want to bring this question to them. But my approach to that is, look, be selfish. Practice this thing called self-care, because it's not selfish to practice it. Unplug for a little while. I know it's hard. Forget about getting permission from anybody. Forget about what anybody else thinks, and just take some time, some quiet time. You can be out in nature, wherever you want to go, and think about what really matters to you, what really brings you heartfelt joy. I mean, the kind of joy that just ripples up, and the kind of joy that, it excites you, it's contagious. But don't stop there. Once you know what that is, talk about it, write about it, share it with others, see how your life changes, and do what a lot of people do. Reach out and touch others, join discussions like Zoom discussions, lead a discussion on it like you are right now, Minnku, and share with the rest of the world where you were, how you got here. And then just locally, just have coffee with a friend, share it with them, and find out, do they have joy? What hurdles do they face? How did you get over it? It goes on and on, but it becomes contagious once you discover the magic. But you got to be selfish and start with looking within. You got to look within.
Absolutely. And I always believe that, and I've done this reversal. 2 years ago, from being a fashion designer, I moved into a transformation space and a life coach, and started the Circle of Joy. I just feel once you discover, Dennis, rightfully said, if you know what it is, just do more of it. I mean,
Amen.
it's not rocket science. You know what resonates with you. Just do more of it. And the simplest thing. I'm also working with mindfulness a lot, and I feel like if you're mindful, it just doesn't need for you to take a flight and go on a holiday and then be joyful. It's in the moment. So thank you. That was amazing, Dennis. I think that is superb. That's what people out there need to know, and I'm sure they'll benefit. So I'm going to skid over now and
Okay.
see how we can get you to be the most authentic in public that you can be, and it's recorded. I'm looking for raw, unadulterated answers. You could use one word or you could use a sentence. So are we ready?
So these aren't going to be multiple choice answers.
Oh, one or two, yes, just to get the brain going. I don't
Okay,
want you
all right.
getting too comfortable either.
Of course. Okay, let her
Okay.
roll.
All right, let's go for it. The one daily ritual that brings you joy.
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
The one daily ritual that brings you joy, something that you do every day as a standard practice.
Walking with my beautiful bride every morning.
You're such a romantic. I love that. I hope everyone's listening. They need to start doing that. A scene that pops up in your inner scene right now, if you closed your eyes, what do you see?
Oh, my goodness. I see a lot of humanity. And what I mean by that, I see the door to humanity being open, and I just crave to spread the ripples of what you're talking about today. But every day I wake up with that, Minnku. It's just, what can we do? How can I do more? Because I'm so blessed to have the opportunity to do it.
You literally answered my next rapid fire question. What are you grateful for?
Oh, my good. Grateful to have the opportunity to do what many people can, and that's make choices. How do I spend each day? There was an article written recently, and I just love this. It says the average human being has only 80, what was it? Yeah, 80,000 weeks in their life. Step back and say, how do you want to spend each of those weeks? And what difference can you make? And when you start saying that's how much, am I halfway through those weeks? What have I done?
Absolutely.
So focus on it.
Absolutely. I know what you're saying. I've got targets. 2 years from now, I know I'm getting away from the world, 40 days on my own, somewhere in the wilderness. And I think that's what you need to do. So
just in case we have any mathematicians, I misquoted myself. It's 8,000 weeks. I wish I had 80,000 weeks.
So when you said 80,000, I was like, okay.
Right.
There are saints in India who apparently live 80,000 years. And,
I'll take the 80,000.
Absolutely. And absolutely, I hope the universe is listening. That's just how long we need to do good work. So
yes.
The one thing in life you would like to redo if given a chance? Just a brief answer on that, Dennis.
I would like to go back to age 17 when I was young, just out of high school, just joined the armed services. Wow. My first step out of my normal world in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I went out there, and I had, in that first year of kind of discovering on my own for the first time who I was, I would love to relive that.
Oh, how beautiful. And I think it's a beautiful question for all of us. What's the one thing you can't do without in life?
My wife, my wonderful wife. She is an example of fairy tales do come true.
Oh my God. Seriously, I could just droop on that sentence. But okay, alert. What does the world need? One sentence or one word?
Oh my goodness, what the world needs. Well, The world needs to listen better, and the world needs to do more, not necessarily just with my roadmap, because I think a lot of people can just define what more is. You've got so many, people talk about superpowers. We all have something, whatever it is. Maybe that's another discussion to say, what is it? When you discover that, do more good with it.
Absolutely. And what would you like to find behind a closed door?
Oh boy. I'm gonna gravitate back to my favorite topic, it's humanity. It's my opinion. You may have heard me say this before, but I believe, and I've talked to many other people about this, I believe when the world kind of came to a stop about almost 2 years, like 18 months ago, and we were all in the same bucket, I felt that this battle we've had at 360 Nation, for years, we've been trying hard to do everything we could to open that door to humanity. That's the door that I think is open. And let me tell you, Minnku, I've got my foot in that door. It starts to close a little bit over time, because as people come out of their, the pandemic and some of the restrictions, many people are going back to the way it was. But I'm so excited to say many people are stopping and saying, wait a minute, there's more to this all. I need to make a different choice in my life. And to me, that's the humanity door that's open. And that's the one I want to keep pulling people through. Beautiful.
And I'm just going to throw in there that when you find a closed door, crawl out of the window. because it's all about being resourceful and resilient. So Dennis, I hope you will look for windows as well.
Oh, I will.
Yeah. So what's more, the last one there, what is more joyful? Holding hands of a loved one, watching a comedy show on Netflix, or catching a sunset alone? I'm not going to let you have the first one because it seems like the obvious one.
Okay.
So let's go back to watching a comedy show on Netflix or catching a sunset alone.
Oh, catching the sunset, because that's that selfish time for what I'll call self-care, to kind of recharge, rethink, and kind of disconnect so you can then reconnect with whomever and whatever you're doing. That's precious. It's hard to get, but it's precious.
Yes, it is the recharge time. So thank you, Dennis, for bearing your heart, for being so authentic. And I feel that in our session, if there is even one single person whose heart is going to be filled with joy, and if we've lent a smile today, then our work here today is done. And before we finish, Dennis, where can the audience find you to be part of your selfless endeavors in the Be Human and the Humans First?
I would just say come to bizcatalyst360.com. Everything I've spoken about is said much more eloquently than I've just said it. But please come there. And if you don't mind, as I was thinking about joy, I always stumble towards quotes. And I came upon one that I think defines it. People struggle with, well, what does joy mean? Again, like what's humanity mean? So I found a quote that I thought was just so perfect. It's from a lady most people know. Her name was Anne Frank, from back in the war days, Diary of Anne Frank. And thinking about her perspective, where she was and the trauma she was going through and the demons surrounding her, she said, I don't think of all the misery, but I think of the beauty that still remains. I mean, isn't that marvelous? Particularly, and bring that forward to right now.
Absolutely. The unpretentiousness of it all, of our existence. Thank you.
Yep.
I love quotes too, Dennis. So I'm going to close this first episode with one quote to leave a smile lingering on all our lips and on the audiences. It says, you love flowers, but you cut them. You love animals, but you eat them. And you tell me you love me, and now I'm scared.
Very good. Very good.
Bye for now to everyone. Thank you, Dennis. And we'll catch everyone on the 15th of this month again. And keep smiling and be joyful forever. Bye now.
Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome. Thank you.